Welcome to the conference of the Global Apparel Sourcing Expo, which is organized by the IAF and its partners, ForSource and Sourcing Journal. My name is Matthijs Grité and I'm Secretary General of the IAF, the International Apparel Federation. The IAF has members all across the world on all continents, associations, companies, the entire fashion ecosystem that we unite to build stronger, smarter, and more sustainable supply chains. Now, this conference that is part of this digital expo has a number of major topics that we're discussing, topics that are crucial to the apparel industry: sustainability, sourcing trends, especially as a result of COVID-19, innovation, and digitization. And here now we are focusing on the sourcing trends, the main developments that are taking place on the global map of our industry. And it is my great pleasure to have here with us the president of the IAF, the International Federation, Han Bekke, who is also the president of MODINT, the Dutch Industry Association for the Apparel and Textile Industries. So a few other people have such an overview of what is happening globally. What are the mega trends as Mr. Bekke? So it's my great pleasure to give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Matthijs. It's an honor to participate in this webinar. Also, because it's the first time, as you said, that IAF and ForSource and supported by Sourcing Journal is holding this event. As you might understand, and thank you for the introduction. Probably too much honor, but anyway, it puts some burden on my shoulders. But I will try to do my best. I think that talking about sourcing trends, you have to look into what the market is developing to. And my presentation, in preparing this, I thought the perfect storm is probably a good word for indicating what is going on at this time caused by COVID-19. I think it's time is there to reboot the apparel supply chain, and that also affects to sourcing trends. If the first picture I would like to share with you is the latest economic forecast by the International Monetary Fund. What is the effect in economic terms of COVID-19? And you see that the IMF in the left column is expecting nearly 5% decrease in economic growth worldwide. The figures for the US and the EU and for the United Kingdom are even worse, some 8 up till 10%. But at the same time, you see a quick recovery, the yellow columns in this chart, for the next year. But this is all under the perception that there will be a solution for COVID-19. But the situation right now is that we see a second and even a third wave of outbreak in some countries, where in some countries the first wave of COVID-19 is still rolling. So there is a lot of uncertainty with these figures, but it is a dramatic. These are figures we have never seen before since the Second World War. Fortunately, they expect a recovery, but we have to see whether that will come true. So I expect in autumn a new forecast by the IMF based on the situation at that time. If you look now, for instance, in Europe, where holiday season started, that in some regions, some parts of France or Spain or Italy or the Netherlands or Belgium, more casualties are coming up regionally, but it indicates it's going up. And now it's summertime in those countries, so people stay a lot of time outside. where COVID-19 is less impressive than it is when you're inside. But with winter to come or autumn, the people expect that there will be more cases of COVID-19 as long as there is no vaccine. And we know that more than 150 or 200 companies worldwide are working on a vaccine. Let's hope they will find a solution soon. Anyway, it's affecting our textile apparel supply chain. A market of $3 trillion worldwide is under pressure, where we were hardly healed from the earlier financial crisis from 2008. So many fashion companies on the retail and industry had already bad times, and now this COVID-19 is making it worse. Many fashion shops are closed. We see now a step-by-step return to the new normal, where people have to get used to regulations in the social distancing or 1 meter 50 or 2 meters economy. You see that people are struggling with that, and that is leading to a new outbreak, small outbreak in some parts, as I described just before. We see already bankruptcies also in our supply chain, or a call for Article 11 in the USA. Brands we have known for many years are in big problems. So it's affecting our textile apparel supply chain. If you look at this chart, this is the retail sales in the EU, the monthly change. If you look December, January, February, it was quite stable. The brown line the blue line is the total retail sales. The orange one is non-food, and the gray one is textile, clothing, footwear. And you see in February, March, and in April, a huge drop for textile, clothing, retail sales in the EU, but also a very steep recovery in the beginning of May. Nevertheless, sales are still some 38% behind last year. The next one is retail sales for clothing in the USA. There you see a change per month and per period. May 20, there was a recovery with more than 150%. But if you look at May 20 compared to May last year, there is a drop of some 52%. The same, be it in smaller numbers for June. So it indicates that there is a problem there when selling our products to consumers. Matthijs, because you work for the IAF, you were very active in this way. We, as IAF, in the board of IAF, we said, how can we improve the liquidity? Because that is a big need in our supply chain, and also for sourcing, you need cash, you need money to pre-invest in your fabrics, etc. So the effective short-term access to liquidity is still needed, in my view. We are working especially because we represent, as you said, producing countries, apparel industry associations and countries in some 60 countries. We were thinking of how can we generate extra funds for the most vulnerable countries. We reached out to OECD and the ILO and IMF and etc. to see what could be done to have extra money going to the most vulnerable countries like Bangladesh, Cambodia, Myanmar, Turkey, etc., India. It is a process which is very viscous, but we working on that, and we are part of the international working group working on that. The problem we see is that money is available, but how to get it to the manufacturers? It has to do with bureaucracy. It has to do with strict regulations or very complex regulations, etc. So that should be more fluid, and whatever we can, as IAF, as the only worldwide body for the apparel industry, we do. At the same time, we think that more international cooperation of support plans by governments is essential. Now, we have the view that more balance in the supply chain is needed. What we have seen is, and we have taken a firm stand on that as IAF, the first reaction when COVID-19 came across the world, starting in China in January and followed in February, March in Europe, and so forth to the US and the Americas. First reaction of many buyers was to go to the exit door and leaving the orders unpaid and etc. So there was too little supply chain solidarity, and we think this is what we need. There should be more balance in the supply chain. What we're thinking of at IAF is that we should try to come to an internationally accepted fair practice code. We have started a project to build manufacturers' payment and delivery terms to counterbalance apparel buyers' conditions. I know it's a very tough project to achieve, but how fair is it to have your producers invest in fabrics, in yarns, in buttons, in sewing the products, and then to left alone with the products and have to wait 90 or 120 days for your payment, if any payment is coming in. This is not longer acceptable, we feel, and we have to see how we can improve the negotiation power of the suppliers. How can we strengthen that? I think we know it's a very tough project to achieve again, but it has shown to us that there is an imbalance which should be restored. I think time is there to reboot our supply chain. The discussion about the situation in the fashion business was already ongoing after the former financial crisis from 2008 onwards. So it is not something new now caused by COVID-19. There was already a discussion going on, and I think that should be more intense because COVID-19 shows that there are some hiccups in our supply chain. What I would wish is that we get rid of the huge price pressure which is ongoing in our supply chain. We can never be more sustainable if the prevailing business model leads to races to the bottom. And so we should try to beat this high price pressure, improve our margins. We need resources for investments and also in working conditions. I mean, we're talking a lot about social sustainability, not only in terms of social terms, but also environmental issues. And I foresee a lot of pressure and regulation from governments to force us to improve. Like the EU is connecting FTAs with social conditions in producing countries. Look at the Myanmar or Cambodia, for instance, or Bangladesh, the anything but arms regulation. So you see a movement also on circularity, on extended producers' responsibility levies to force our industry to improve on sustainability. We need money for that, and we need margins to cover up. So there should be more balance in demand and production. As I said before, there's too much production and less demand, so that leads to a shakeout. But on the other way, we should try to see well how we can finally come to a pull market rather than a push market. And this is an issue we discussed at many IAF conventions in the past, and still we are in this basic prevailing business models of where can I produce the cheapest, etc., and squeeze our suppliers, etc., rather than looking how can we serve the consumer better. And if there is any time to do it, then it's now, I would say. That's what I mean with a perfect storm. And of course, the health situation of people is most important, but also the wellness of the people in our supply chain, because they are under constant stress. So what we're looking for is to make their life somewhat easier, probably. So, but what does it mean? It needs a change in order rhythm. It needs changes in the number of collections. And with order rhythm, we had a discussion in the Netherlands. Why do we need, winter is starting with climate change? When is winter starting? I mean, we have seen for many years, mild winters in Europe, for instance, in Western Europe. If you look at data, of temperature, then you see already a change in the type of fabrics we need in those months. At the same time, we see that winter collections are already delivered in June, where people are about to go on holiday. So why do we need the stuff in June when we sell it, or the best period to sell it is October, November, December. So I see fortunately in some countries, and of course being in the Netherlands, I have a better view on that sometimes. We start a discussion with retailers. Can we change this order rhythm? Why do we need this winter collection in June? Put it in the shop in August, then mark down because nobody is going to the shop or is on holiday. Temperatures of 30 degrees and more, because even in the Netherlands, the sea climate is changing under the climate change. So we had very dry, hot summers the last 2 years, and we expect one to come back. Who is willing to go to the shop anyway and buy winter clothes? So, and now we see this discussion going on. That is what we need. How we can change that. So speed to market is key, and that means also talking about sourcing strategies, that we have that companies will reconsider their sourcing and distribution strategies. Probably, of course, there's a lot of discussion on reshoring, nearshoring. We see some production coming back to the EU. Portugal is building up capacity. Italy always has been a very good hub for production. Turkey is benefiting from some parts coming back, but for the basic, I still think that the Far East is still a perfect place to produce. But if I look at how many young people in our business graduated from fashion universities, start their startups, and thinking of new business models, I think that every manufacturer should contact the huge network of fashion universities we have worldwide, and they are in every country, and reach out to the young people and see how they look at our market. It's very inspiring. I can recommend anybody to do that. You know, Matthijs, we started up a cooperation with the IFTI, with the International Federation of Fashion Technology Institute. They have a huge knowledge which we could make use of. So I would advise anybody to reach out to young people and startups and see how it can give new impulses for our supply chain. Their problem is that they don't get. We were talking about liquidity. They don't get loans from banks to start up the business because, as I said, fashion is not very positive image at banks. So let alone startups. But a combination of big companies and startups could be a fantastic combination. Look at Unilever, for instance, the big food company. They have special section for startups, trying to work with them in a kind of lab to get new influences or new ideas for their business. So there are a lot of huge possibility for us also. For speed to market, you need smart factories that can improve productivity and cost competitiveness, and also it needs investment in digitization that clearly is gaining wings under COVID-19. Already last year at the fair in Frankfurt, the tech fabrics, was it technical tech, and what is the name of the fair?
Text process.
Text process, exactly.
Text process, yes.
The holes with digitization was huge. I mean, a lot of possibilities that could, and of course that needs investments, and for investments you need money. It's simple as that. So rebooting our supply chain is more than needed. Talking about sourcing, because that is the topic of this afternoon webinar. Sourcing strategies, you have of course to look into what is happening in the market before you depend your sourcing strategy, and we should not go into a gap of rebooting a sourcing strategy and not looking at what is happening in the market. collaboration in supply chain is needed. A better exchange of data. I sometimes talk retailers or other companies in the supply chain. I said, why not exchange your data with your supplier? Why should I do that? They say. I said, this is old-fashioned school, so to say. Data, big data has been mentioned many times as the new gold. I see a lack of exchange of data in our supply chain, and that has to improve. Look alone our cooperation with ForSource. It's helping us also to get a better view on because they have a lot of data. So collaboration based on a better exchange of data is absolutely needed. Also important is that, and you know, IAF is, as always, and still is in favor of free trade but fair trade. The last thing we need is that we go into protectionism to help our industry. That is not the way we should do it. And I see a good future based on a more sustainable and cleaner supply chain. And that should be seen as an asset rather than cost. So these are my elements, Matthijs, for rebooting our supply chain. The time is there, and I would advise everybody make use of it.
Thank you, Han. You know, it really sounds like and looks like a clear agenda for the future. So rebooting is one, but then what do, right? The COVID-19 crisis sort of presses the off button, and then when you press the on button again, what steps do you take? And I really like the overview that you've given. You know, having done a number of these conference presentations such as we're doing now on all of these topics, you notice that they are very much interrelated. So sustainability and digitization are interrelated because they all at one point have to do with the profitability, with the effectiveness of the whole industry. You know, if the industry is not able to generate income for the entire system, then everything becomes very difficult. And the good thing is that there are many, and your agenda shows that there are many possibilities now to solve a lot of problems. And now the sort of, what shall we say, pressure is there really to do all of that.
Well, I see examples in of course, coming from the Netherlands and working for being president of MODINT, I know how we did it in the Netherlands, but a similar project was done in Germany. After the Second World War, we had to rebuild our industry, and we were forced by retailers who, of course, from their perspective, want to do the best out of a contract, etc. So we decided to strengthen the power of the industry by developing collective payment and delivery conditions. So we formed a block, and at that time it was easier, to be honest. I mean, we have competition law, EU regulations, or in US or in other parts. So this example of combining forces and come up with collective payment and delivery conditions has been developed since 1950, and it's still working. So members of MODINT, a big part of the members of MODINT, make use of this collective payment and delivery conditions. They print it on their order forms, they print it on their invoices, etc. But you have to negotiate, of course. Your customer should accept it. Now, the problem for IAF, as IAF is now looking, can we bring those national experiences, like in Germany or in the Netherlands and other countries, to an international level?
Yeah.
But for that, you have to negotiate with retailers. Now, the problem for IAF is that there is no international body for retailers. So it means that we have to reach out to Zara, to Hennes & Mauritz, to smaller retailers, etc. What we try to, as I said, to do with this project is to see, for instance, you could start in a certain country, like let's take Bangladesh, that you offer the manufacturers in Bangladesh a set of collective payment and delivery conditions which are compatible with their law, their national law, and say this is something you should use together. For instance, being a member of BGMIA, the Bangladesh Garment Export Association or the Knitting Association, they agree to use these conditions. Then you have a level playing field, right?
Yeah.
Then you have to go out, of course, and there's the that part can be done, in my view. It will be difficult, but it can be done. The most difficult part is to negotiate with your customer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they will say,
that.
that's nice, Matthijs, but I have my own conditions.
Yeah.
Right. So that we have to make clear to those companies that it's not fair any longer to have your supplier invest in the fabrics. And if I buy a fridge, right, in a shop, they ask and they deliver, let's say next week, they ask me to pay 10, 15, 20% already with this order. Why not for apparel? Why do we have to wait when the products are ready and shipped and then wait and then 90 or 120 days? The Dutch government is now coming up with a law that big companies should pay within 30 days. Okay. That is after a lobbying that MODINT did because of COVID-19, because we had some companies said, you have to wait 90 days will be 120 days. Can you imagine 1/3 of a year you have to wait for your money? Yeah. The costs are going on. And we accept it because we like the orders. We like the numbers. That is what is in our bloodstream, so to say. And I would say to companies there, and we will help them with that, to see that there is more balance, because of course there's a negotiation point, and IAF can never go into the direct negotiations. No national association can go into the negotiations between a supplier and a vendor. So what we can do is offer them tools as a basis to start the discussion. And that is something we try to work out with Bangladesh as a test case, and let's see how it will move. At the same time, we have to reach out, and we will in our communication say, this is if we respect each other, then we should also come to a more balanced position in the relationship supplier and vendor. Talking about sustainability, this is also a part of sustainability.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that many big companies have signed all kinds of codes of conduct or fashion pacts or whatever, the Copenhagen Fashion Agenda. The first thing they did when the crisis came out was, as I said before, moving to the exit door and say, keep your orders, keep your products, and I will not pay you. This is ridiculous. This is not sustainable. So I was talking about a kind of fair practice code. You know, there are initiatives like better buying, etc. We should try to combine all those individual initiatives to a more stronger approach. I feel there is too much separation in I would say. So that's also part of collaboration.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that elaborate answer. And I think as you say, the urgency is there, but it's also good to hear that even if you look in the future, sometimes some of the solutions can be found in the history, right? So sometimes, and that's also the beauty of having a global network to share. One organization may have the experience that can help now us to move forward, and I can say you even Bangladesh you mentioned as a test case, but we'll probably be able to make now the test case bigger and to work immediately with a global coalition. So that is all the advantages of working on a global level, sharing information, sharing power, and focusing efforts. So it sounds promising.
And make use of the best practices and learn from it. And,
it sounds promising. Okay, so we can actually end the conversation on a positive note, because it's a tough a tough context, economic context we're talking about. But thank you for the inspiring ideas, for the clear agenda.
Thank you.
Well, I can say I wish the IAF all the best, especially because I'm very closely connected, and I look forward to continuing this work.
Yeah.
Thank you, Han.
Thank you. My pleasure.